my vision for the world, if you may, Ginny, is for us to really truly get to a place where we can be more empathetic and understanding of one another and believe in the good of another. Believe that, nobody comes to the table thinking, I'm going to do a bad job today.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to host such an innovation powerhouse on our first episode of season 3 of the Visionaries podcast. Please join me in welcoming Subha Shetty, current VP of Product at Fanatics, the largest global digital sports platform. Shubha's experiences and accomplishments in product and design expands across renowned companies such as eBay, Walmart.com, Upwork, and Synchrony. And in her 15-year product management career, she has launched groundbreaking products like eBay's automated bidding, for which she holds a patent. So awesome. Walmart's grocery delivery, and had 2 successful startup exits. In addition to her impressive professional achievements, Shubha is a passionate advocate for her team's happiness, diversity, and inclusion, and she actively mentors aspiring product managers at organizations such as 500 Startups and Founders Institute, and serves as an advisor and angel investor for various startups. So, Shubha, welcome to the show. I'm super excited because we have so much to talk about.
So glad to be here, Ginny. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you're such a busy person. It's been so hard to get a hold of you to get you on our podcast. I'm curious, what's keeping you busiest right now and what keeps you up at night?
Oh my gosh, you just went right to the, heart of the topic in my life right now. Well, I consider myself really fortunate that I am busy and juggling a few things, both professionally and personally. Professionally, Fanatics is at an incredible milestone where we're really reinventing how we're thinking about how fans interact with their teams, what an end-to-end digital sports platform really means for them, and bringing in various products and solutions like commerce, retail, collectibles, betting, gaming, etc., all to the mix to deliver a great fan experience. So it's really at that cutting edge milestone, which is keeping a lot of us awake in terms of making sure that we have these use cases lined out and we have the strategy worked and all of the execution is happening the way we actually want it to be. So that's one part of it. And I think the second part of it is, as you know, I'm involved with, mentoring many different startups. And, there is just so much happening in the startup community nowadays in terms
Mm.
of really great AI innovation. And what started off as helping startup founders craft their product strategy, possibly their pitch decks, etc., has evolved into how much I'm able to get out of it in turn. I've learned so much about AI, how people are innovating, working under constraints. I mean, Ginny, your journey to be able to stand up Wonder is a success story in itself, and I'm sure you must have had many challenges in how you were able to bring in all of these constraints and still be able to kind of execute on your vision. And so just I get so much back from the startup founders that I
Mm.
try to invest some time in that on a regular basis. And I have a son who's graduating third grade, and his project portfolio is coming up, for which I need to kind of focus a little bit more time on for the next few days too. So all of that is coming together, which is really great. But again, really fortunate to be busy during these times.
Wow, that definitely sounds like a jam-packed schedule, being a mom and having a career and advising so many startups. How do you prioritize? And I ask this both in your life, how do you prioritize? And then how do you also prioritize as a product manager, right? Everything just kind of comes hand in hand.
I tell my team this sometimes too, that I product manage my life. For me, product management is not a job, but a way of life and a way of thinking. So I always have prioritization models for both personal and professional jobs. I'm always working hard to set expectations on whether I'm going to show up for that third cousin's call, or I might just have to take that time back and take a nap or something like that. But I'm always, product managing my life and my work that way. So, in a way, when it comes to product management, as you know, there are so many prioritization models and frameworks, and I'm quite a framework. I like frameworks. I think they help give you a head start in terms of, solving problems. So, there are so many frameworks in terms of value complexity, Kano model, RICE, ICE, and I don't think there's a perfect model per se, but I typically find that, starting off with more greenfield topics, the value complexity, which on an X and Y axis is basically about what is the value that you're going to get out of uh, what this project
Mm-hmm.
will actually achieve, and what is the complexity and effort that actually goes in, is a very simple model that can help ground and align teams, cross functionally. So I use that a lot at work. Personally, though, I just have a list in terms of like urgency, in terms of what I need to respond to, which I share with many broad members of my family. So that's kind of how I, juggle both of these in a way.
Yeah, I love that. And in your LinkedIn bio, you've also mentioned that you manage over 1 million man hours, multi-million dollar budgets, and 50 plus team members. So, besides being able to prioritize and using these frameworks, what else would you say goes into the secret sauce to ensure success through any of the projects that you're working on?
That's a great question. And over time, I've had to really develop my sense of instinct and my sense of what I commit myself to and what I say no to. I actually, I'm one of those people who's a bit of a people pleaser. Like I like to say yes and I like to, take on things. And I got my first product management job when people did not know what product management was. I mean, it was, almost 2 decades ago. And it was basically just things and topics that either the engineering team or the marketing team just didn't want to do. And so there were eager beavers like me putting up our hands saying, yeah, we're going to do that. So I come from that class of product management who really like to be in the midst of things, take on more stuff, want to be able to really deliver, please, say yes, etc. And so over time, I found that um, as and when the scope of my work expanded to not just what I had to do, but also what I had to get out of others, and many of them who don't report into me, I've had to really rethink and rechange and hone my instinct of what works and what doesn't work. And really get better at saying the yes and what that means over a longer period of time, and saying no, and and holding to that over a longer period of time. So we live in a world of so much data and so much prioritization
Yeah.
frameworks at our disposal. But at the end of the day, Ginny, I think what I've had to really work on is my sense of instinct, and my
Mm.
ability to say yes and no to various topics. Does that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that makes so much sense, and like I really resonate with that because I think the biggest challenge now with so much happening in the world is when you say yes and when you consciously say no. Because even for me, when people ask like, "Oh, like how do you like manage your priorities?" The response that I give is very similar to yours, which is I'm hyper conscious about what I say yes to because in saying yes to something, you're indirectly saying no to something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so knowing those trade-offs, knowing what the opportunity cost is for saying the yes and
Mm,
potentially for saying the no's too. I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes by saying no to things which I should have taken on, or saying yes to things which, haven't really resulted in the kind of like impact that we expected. But those are, I feel like, the learning opportunities where it gets better and our instinct gets better. So I think I still need to get better at it. I still am at a stage where, if somebody calls me for a meeting in terms of like mediating a topic or helping give advice on a certain thing, I would say yes. And usually that means my meeting calendar is pretty full, but I'm also at the forefront of telling my team, hey, we should have fewer meetings, and we should be working in a different way, in a
yeah.
different mode, and really focusing on our craft. And so it's been interesting. I've had to go back and actually recheck my own assumptions on what I say yes to and what I commit to and what that trade-off
Mm,
actually
mm,
means. So you're absolutely right. I mean, it's the not just the yes or the no, but it like when you say that, what are you trading off is actually an important understanding to have.
Yeah, definitely. And I so appreciate you saying yes to this podcast because I know you're busy and I'm just really grateful to have you here because there's so much knowledge that you'll be able to share with our audience.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. I'm happy to be here, and I'm hope I can help in any way. Of course, anything for you.
Thank you. And what's funny, I was like reflecting back to how I know you, and I was like, man, it's been almost, if not more than 5 years since you and I have met, which is quite a long time if you think about it. I know,
Has it
and
been
the
that
5, 6 years has gone by really fast, right? Like
That is
it's kind of
yeah,
crazy when you
and now
think
we
about
are
it.
in our second innings in terms of like working together and partnering together, which is really awesome. But yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't imagine it would be that long, um, which is
yeah.
great. I mean, it's a testimony to I think what you have built, Ginny. I think a lot of startups that I work with have a shelf life, if you may, and most of
Mm.
them actually fail over a period of if you look at it over a period of a year, a couple of years. But you've been able to create something sustaining, which I'm hoping you're feeling really proud of.
I am. Thank you so much. And I bring that up because you have been such a big part of that journey. Like, so just to give everyone a background, Shuba gave us an opportunity when Wander was such a tiny little agency. And this was when you were the head of product at Loop before they were acquired by Synchrony.
That's right.
And you guys were looking for UX designers for the team. And rather than hiring in house, Shiba and her team gave us an opportunity and brought the Wander team in. So I'm incredibly grateful because you really have been part of our journey. And the question that I wanted to ask from that was, what was it that you saw in our team? And what philosophy do you believe in regarding building the right team and culture?
I did imagine, it that way, Ginny. So thank you so much for making me part of your journey. I think there are a couple of dimensions in terms of your question. The first one is just why did we choose you to be that design partner when, to your point, we could have hired internally or had options externally for other more experienced vendors, if you may. I think for that, it really came down to there is an aspect of can you do the job or not, right? I mean, there is one aspect of that I think should be front and center in terms of whoever and whatever you're evaluating per se. And I felt for that job that we actually had, you had a very clear plan. You had a very clear understanding of the job. You asked us great questions. This had the bones of like a great partnership moving forward. Wherein I think is the second part of I think the answer to this question is that I truly believe that this is a partnership and this needs to be nurtured. Whenever there are uh, technology aspects of what we're building that we look for either internal or external resources from a staff augmentation standpoint, from a burst capacity standpoint, I'm always looking to see and assess how we can develop strategic vendor relationships, not just like a one time in terms of, hey, there's a project, we finish that, and then we kind of
Mm,
like move on. But really, the great areas are where these are looked upon as partnerships. So, again, as I mentioned, we're in our second innings right now. And I think this is testimony to the fact of how we've also evolved and how you've invested in this as a partnership. And I think I look for those kind of not only the short term, hey, can we do the job or not, but also the long term. If we invest in this, what could a partnership in this actually look like for the longer term? What can we do
mm,
to possibly impact the fortunes of the company, but also possibly do something really different in that space? And if you remember with Loop Commerce, we were doing corporate gifting, which was a very dated SaaS product, and we truly made that mobile first and built a really clean, simple user experience around it with a lot of underlying complexity. I think that's the vision of what can we partner together, what is the goal, what's the short term benefits to this, but also really
mm.
what is the long term kind of partnership what would that yield from an investment standpoint. And I truly think right now, whenever I have design opportunities, design needs, I think of Wonder a lot. Not just because of this podcast, but also because we've worked together and I vouch for the work and you've done great work. And I appreciate the quality and the talent that you're bringing into the mix. So, it's really a long term investment that I actually see. So that's one part of it. And then the second part of it is, um, I have, and I say this, with full honesty and sincerity. I think, Ginny, you are a superstar, and I want to be able to support you personally too. And I come from the school of thought where women need to be able to sponsor other women. We talk a lot
Mm,
about how can women support women, how can women mentor women, and I have a bit of a perspective on it. I think women are over mentored, if you may. There's a lot of advice out there, but I want to be one of those people who really puts the money where the mouth is, or walks the walk in terms of actually sponsoring more women, in terms of like giving them and the opportunities
mm.
that they need to be able to really truly shine. So I think of this a lot at work. And for me, I felt a connection to you personally, and I wanted to be able to see what I could do to be able to support in any which way possible. And so I think that's another aspect of wanting to be able to work with Wander, and selfishly with you too, Jenny.
I really appreciate that. That just like tugged at my heart. Thank you so much. And, this isn't the first time I've heard you say that it's so important to support women. And I think it's wonderful, what you just mentioned about how important it is to sponsor women. So, why is it to you personally that it's important? And what impact have you seen in sponsoring women around you?
Frankly, I haven't seen many examples of sponsorship in terms of women. I want to see more of it. But I know that there are people thinking about the same problem that I'm doing. And I'm hoping that this becomes as much of a movement as it is about how we want to mentor women and support women. But, I think, if you just look at the data, Ginny, women just have just more against, up against them when it comes to, um, I don't know if there's anything called a balance between a professional and a personal life, but the professional aspects and growth professionally, women just are up against more. And if you read the McKinsey report in terms of how COVID has impacted women, where a
Mm,
lot of women leaders like me are simply just giving up. They're saying this is just not worth it. And they're
mm,
evaluating their trade offs. A lot of the caregiving responsibilities, whether you have children or not, is primarily, taken by women during COVID. And so that, has resulted in many women in many different ways reconfiguring and reevaluating what they want to achieve from a professional career. I don't know if I
mm,
would be doing what I was doing myself if I did not have this opportunity at Fanatics. I'm very grateful for Fanatics for me to be able to have this opportunity to lead and to really create impact. It was necessary for me to be able to know that the opportunity cost in terms of not spending time with family or aging parents and cousins, etc., whom I'm very close to because I'm the only child, so they're like my siblings, if you may, is worth the trade-off in terms of the long nights and weekends that I need to kind of like put in to be able to maintain and sustain a job like this. And so I think that's why women just absolutely need that support in terms of life. Just have more things up against us, and
mm,
uh, I think that that support goes just that extra way to give many women that confidence that they can do it. They can achieve whatever whatever balance means to them, and
yeah.
at the end of the day, that it's worth it to be able to go through that process too.
Yeah, and you actually just answered my question, which was, why was it worth it for you to stick through what you're doing, especially with you having a third grader, a family, and all of that. But I think you just answered the question, unless there's more that you wanted to elaborate on that.
It really comes back to what I want to achieve, professionally, in my life, and how that plays into the overall aspect of what I want to do with life overall. And I feel where Fanatics is, the opportunity that is on my plate right now, the team that I work with, it all kind of like nicely fits in. And the minute I see that maybe that balance is off, I might have to make different decisions. And so I think the beauty of also what the pandemic has achieved for some senior folks like myself is also that we've found, in a way, because in a not in a forceful way, but given just that we've had just more time to spend at home and maybe with ourselves, in a way, it's allowed, I think, at least me, to reflect on what is really most important to me in my life. And
Mm,
really, what is most important to me in my life is to be a good mother, is to be a good friend, is to be a
mm,
good sister. But I do find that having that professional outlet and creating meaningful products, bringing together teams, working with great teams, and having that intellectual stimulation helps me be a better mother and a better wife and a better friend and
mm,
a better, sister. So I think I had to go through a lot of soul searching in terms of what was important for me and how my career and life fit in. And I feel like it fits in right now, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I also love talking to, as I mentioned, entrepreneurs like yourself, in terms of how you achieved what you did, and your struggle and your journey, and helping folks like yourself really craft a vision that is commercial, if you may. So I think those two things really keep me going, because it really comes down to, it helps me with my goal of just wanting to be a better person in all of these areas that I mentioned. Does that make
yeah.
sense, Jenny?
Yeah, it does. And I love what you shared, which is your own soul searching journey and coming out of that and saying, what's the most important to me in my life is being a good mom and a good friend and a sister and a good family person. And that my career isn't the why, the career is how I can use that to then become a better mom, a sister, friend, etc. So I really love that because I think so many people get lost in having their career as like their how they define their self-worth and how they define what's most important in life. But there's so many things that's happening around us that are more important than our careers. And it does take a lot of courage to say that, like, I'm not defined by that. I actually have other important things in my life. And I think you just did that in what you shared.
What is really interesting, Ginny, is through this journey, what I realized is this quote that comes back to me, which is, happiness is like a butterfly. The more you chase after it, the more it runs away from you. But when you turn your
Yeah.
attention to other things, it comes and softly sits on your shoulder. So there was a time when I was, very focused on my professional life being the number one priority in my life, and I sacrificed a lot personally for it. But I realized that I was actually not making the kind of progress that I wanted professionally for various different reasons. And so I really had to
Mm.
take a step back and go, what am I going to take with my grave, to my grave with me? And it was
Yeah.
certainly not the titles and not the products that I launched, which, by the way, I'm very proud of all of those things, and especially the teams that I create and I work with and I mentor and support. But really, it came down to who I am personally. And once I think that clarity was achieved, everything just started to move in that direction. And it's one of those things where my professional life is absolutely important for me. It is a huge part of my identity. But when I made that shift is when I started to realize better success actually professionally. I was given more executive level
Mm,
roles to
mhm.
be a part of. So it was almost like redefining what was important for me. And to your point, the how is possibly as important as like the what and the goal per se.
Yeah, I truly believe that like your reality, your external world is a reflection of who you are inside. And so if you're constantly chasing after a feeling inside, then like you're going to feel that from the outside world too. You're chasing after a career, a dollar amount, or whatever that success looks like to you. But if you're at peace with who you are, I don't know, everything else around you become peaceful, even in the work that you're doing. And like in my own journey, I like with Wander, I felt like I was constantly chasing after the success and the dollar amount. And I realized that by letting go of that outcome and actually focusing on how I can be a good person and a good leader, the dollar and the success just kind of naturally came after that. And it's just, it feels so counterintuitive because I think we're all fixated on the outcome. But
Yeah.
once you let go and actually focus internally, like everything else becomes very easy.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a process. I mean, right? I mean, that takes a long time to be able to get to. And I can't even say that I'm fully in that nirvana state right now. I mean, I still, on a weekly basis, possibly, make some not so great trade-offs, personally, to be able to focus on things that I need to do professionally. But I also have an extremely supportive family that truly understands why this is important for me. And so I think it's that combination of things where, I keep telling myself it's a journey, and
Mm,
I have to be able to enjoy this journey and just not get fixated
yeah.
on the destination. So I can't say I'm perfect at it, but I'm learning and getting there.
Yeah, 100%. It's about the journey. And on this topic, there's just so much importance where individuals need to develop like their EQ skills, both in and out of their professional lives. So, what advice would you give to young leaders on how they can develop their EQ to become better leaders for their teams?
It's a great question, Ginny. And as a younger and more naive product manager earlier on, I thought my job was to launch products and solve technology problems. And I come from, a background in engineering. I've been an engineer, engineering manager, and so I was deeply entrenched and familiar with, a lot of the technical challenges and complexities. And so I thought that was my job, but I slowly on and we've launched many products, obviously that impacts people's lives, and then you slowly start to realize it's not just about the products and the solutions. They are a means, but actually, what matters is the people whose lives these products are impacting and whose lives it may change, whether it was, when we launched Walmart grocery delivery. I mean, we really launched it from 0 to 1. I had a, small core team that I was working with when I was the product lead there. And our mission was to really save, busy households time. And in the Bay Area, we did not probably think of we do not associate grocery with Walmart, but in many other parts of America, Walmart has a very strong grocery presence. And so we really wanted to
Mm,
help these busy households. We really wanted to, take the guesswork out of, dinner planning. We wanted to give them some time back to spend time with family and truly embody the Walmart culture and values of, living better and spending less, or wiser, for instance. And so, for at least the first two versions of the product, I naively just focused on the product and the solutions and the capability and the features and the prioritization and making sure the business stakeholders were aligned and making sure we were measuring the impact of what we were launching and user adoption and growth and conversion and all of that, very important things. But I think I really missed one very key thing in terms of what is the mission of what we're actually trying to build, and
mm,
how is it not only helping our users, but also how are we as a team internally in the company enjoying this experience. And once I was
mhm,
able to start thinking about that, I realized a few more things, which I, should have possibly done earlier, which is if we really wanted to save time, then, we pioneered this concept. This was like 15 years ago when we pioneered the concept of like auto defaults in like checkout. You see this in every place right now, where your information is stored from cookies, your payment information is automatically displayed, defaults to shipping options, etc. It wasn't so new at that time when we introduced it, and it had a lot of technical
mm,
challenges, which technology has also evolved to the extent that these technology infrastructural challenges are fewer now. At that time, it wasn't, and I
It's
think
almost expected. Yeah.
it's almost expected now. To your point, absolutely.
Yeah.
So thinking about what would that be to be able to speed that checkout for busy housewives, busy moms, I think was a was a great challenge in terms of helping drive a user experience improvement that directly impacted somebody's day to day. And in doing that, we had to unpack and uncover an incredible amount of technical complexity. We had to uncover we had to get additional budget for various things that we needed to do. So, obviously interacting with the finance teams. And internally, one of my goals was to also build a culture where we all enjoyed working with one another. We empathized with the problems. My goal was to elevate this to more than a team which would just go to the finance team and ask for more budget, and the finance team would say no or ask for a rationale, and that back and forth. And while that, somewhat existed, I wanted to cultivate better empathy, between our working teams. That I carry through in most every single one of my working situations right now. I almost expect that there will be some sort of like conflict, some sort of friction. But what I aspire
Mm.
to is, are we all coming together to believe in something that we're all really proud of? Do we feel like we can have a good time working together? Do we feel like we can impact the lives of the people that we're launching these products and solutions for? And I think uh, if I'm able to answer these three questions in a way, I'm able to construct at my level of, not just creating the products, but actually creating a culture of creating products that is sustainable and scalable and enjoyable for the company.
Mm. So you mentioned like having healthy conflict, right? So I think one of the things that I've been learning as a leader is how to create healthy conflict, because I think there's a toxic conflict where everyone's just heightened and everyone's just, throwing their ideas. They want their ideas to win, and like your ideas suck and whatever. And then the opposite, which is also not very good, is when there's not conflict at all. Everyone's agreeable and everyone's like, okay, yeah, you do it your way.
Yeah.
And I also think that can be very detrimental. So as a leader, how do you create that healthy conflict where you disagree and commit? Because I think that little friction is what's going to create innovation. But some people might, you could be on one extreme or the other. So how do you get to that healthy conflict state?
It's funny when you actually mention one of the other sides of like toxic conflict is when everybody is agreeable. Sometimes I'll take that and run with it. When everybody is agreeable, well, it's just like, yes, yes, let's just get this done. But no, to
Yeah.
your point, if we really want to solve problems for users, if we really want to improve people's lives, the fact of the matter is that we do need diverse perspectives. So, when you introduce me as, somebody who's passionate about diversity, it's not just in the letter form of like hiring, but also diversity of thought, values, ideas, behaviors are really important for us to be able to really understand first what the problem is, and help us craft a solution, to that. So I always believe the best teams are diverse teams where there are folks coming in with different points of view, different challenges, different assumptions. And my role then really becomes truly understanding, peeling back, and setting the context for the teams and helping align the goals. There have been times when our goals are not, say, completely aligned with, say, a biz dev team who is looking to onboard, say, you know, 5 new acquisitions in the next like year, and say from a
Mm.
technology infrastructure standpoint, say we're not set up that way, for instance. And so then it becomes not only just I think the easier path would just be to negotiate this through, but the harder part is actually trying to understand, how do you create these win-win solutions, right? I mean, how do you create these solutions which address the velocity of M&A, say, that we actually want to, but is able to possibly get the budget that we're looking at in a creative way, understanding if it's just more about the technology or about the people. And if it's about the people, tapping into our strategic vendors, that hopefully we've invested time and effort in, so that they're able to like come to the picture and to the problem solving table in short notice. So it's really a lot of work that goes behind context setting for the teams, making the right trade-offs,
Mm-hmm.
and really ensuring that you start off with a diverse set of ideas and you encourage that healthy conflict, you encourage a different point of view. And while doing that, also have a disciplined way of when, hey, we have to start aligning now on on our goals and our execution plans, for instance. And so I love this Netflix analogy where Reid Hoffman talks about there is intense conflict when a problem situation actually happens when they're poring over data for a specific problem. But once a decision is made and folks leave the room, we're all behind one another, supporting one another in executing that problem. And so I really love that analogy. I'm paraphrasing the analogy, obviously, from the book, the culture book for Netflix. But I really enjoyed that, and I try to incorporate that as much as possible in my work.
Yeah, I think that's so important that like have the diversity and as you said, set the context of what is it that you're working on, have that diversity, and then once you have alignment, the decisions made, there's no more discussions. We got to fully execute because I think that it gets really messy when there's like side conversations happening and then you come back in and then the decisions kind of get like a little wobbly. So
Yeah.
100% once the decision's made, you got to execute on that. Even if you decide 6 months later, okay, that was the wrong decision, we can change it, but at least give it 6 months to follow through with it.
Absolutely. So I tell my team, fail fast and fail often. And by the way, there is no
Yeah,
failure. It's all learning, right? So
of
if there is
course.
a failure, it's stagnating and not making a decision and not moving on. So what I try to do also in my teams is, we run so many experiments and tests. I um, try to actually highlight tests that have failed, technically from a numbers
Hmm.
standpoint, but highlight the fact that, the product manager stepped in, made a bold decision, aligned the teams, kept moving forward, and had a solid set of like documented learnings. And so I feel it's, when you reduce the barrier to what is considered quote unquote failure, you really encourage the teams to be able to try, experiment, learn, and really innovate. I mean, so I
Mhm.
think that has worked really well in the past for me. And so far, I always encourage the teams and put the spotlight on people who are just trying new things, whether it works out or not by the numbers.
Exactly. It's just encouraging that culture more and more. And speaking of challenges, what are the challenges? And then what are your effective approaches in overcoming resistance to change when implementing digital transformation initiatives to mature industries?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and there are you've asked $1 billion question, which is, digital transformation in any shape or form is definitely very challenging, as you can imagine. Usually, when when you have digital, transformation, one of three problems at a very high level is emerging within the company. The first one is that you probably have too many people working on too much manual work, which could easily be taken by systems and automated through systems. The second is you're typically balancing growth and efficiency. So your business goals are also stretched. You're trying to do both of these things, which does not afford you the option to scale what you did from a manual process standpoint. So you need more automation. And the third is you probably have many systems, old dated systems, possibly a lot of M&A activity that actually brings these many systems in. And it's interesting, Ginny, I'm actually living this right now where we are in the midst of a pretty significant multi-billion-dollar technology and digital transformation for one of our billion-dollar units. And I think, what I have learned through this process is that to really empathize and understand the goals and also how this will impact the lives of the users that actually this transformation will be executed or launched or will be launched to. And what that means is, I think again, shifting from focusing on just the technology and just the products and the
Mm.
solutions to the people. Transformation at the end of the day is a lot about people, and I think people forget that in a way and focus on just building the
Yeah.
greatest AI tool possible. But if it's not usable, or if it's actually
Yeah.
makes their life more difficult than actually using a spreadsheet, which by the way is pretty easy to use, we're really not transforming their lives for the better. We're transforming the lives in the
Yeah.
reverse. So I think really focusing on the people, focusing on the value that it drives for the people, focusing on understanding and having a clear vision of what that end state would look like for these users
Mm.
and our customers broadly, is I think one of the core tenets of digital transformation that at many levels people need to come together on, whether it's at the leadership level, at the middle management level, at the execution, day-to-day level. People really have to come together on that vision. And what is one of the more unfortunate things about digital transformation is that, one, it does not happen overnight. And two, when you're trying to balance these many things, usually that period of change is actually more painful than actually living with the
Yeah.
antiquated system. So, managing
Mm.
that change, managing that process of education, training, onboarding, having the right documentation just helps calm nerves a lot in terms of our business users, but also really helps take it to the next level in terms of how we want to empathize with our business users. So that change management aspect of has been really critical as a way for us to be able to break down the barriers of how we have resisted change. So, but really, it's going back to really aligning on the vision of what that change is, how long it would take,
Mm.
what would those steps look like. And again, aligning, debating and aligning at many different levels on the scope and the prioritization of it is all really key for us to be able to execute a solid digital transformation. And by the way, there aren't many successful cases of digital transformation. It's most companies go through that in a very painful process. And I do believe some of the common pitfalls are: one, you focus too much on the technology rather than the people; two, not enough investment for change and training and documentation; and three, misalignment on kind of what that end goal is. And so, with these three things, I do believe that teams can come together at many different levels for us to be able to execute digital transformation. Because at the end of the day, you need a lot of advocates for digital transformation. It can't just be the technology and the product folks saying, this is the greatest chatbot tool for us to transform our customer service organization. The customer service teams need to see that, feel that,
Mm.
be
Mhm.
inspired by it, be excited about it, and excited about it to the extent that they will actually invest in the change over the next period of like next weeks or months, how much ever it takes for them to be able to get to a better state. So you need advocates across the board for digital transformation. And so that upfront process of setting the context, setting the goals, aligning on the goals at various different levels, investing in the change with a deep empathy of how this would impact the business users, I think those are really key for us to be able to execute any digital transformation. But this is such a broad topic, Ginny. I mean, I'm happy to
Yeah.
delve into it, any aspect of this a little bit more, because um, you know there's mountains and mountains of like articles and books written on this. It's not an easy topic, but something that possibly every
Yeah.
company and industry will probably go through right now.
Of course. And I would like to dive in just a little bit more deeper on if there's any specifics, because, in asking any change management question, most people's response is you have to focus on the people, you have to focus on the users. So, is there anything specific, whether it's a tool or a tactic, that you can advise people on as they're going through digital transformation?
Yeah, so I think, and this is again from experience of what we're actually living through right now. One of my teams is actually living through. Change management often gets confused with launch management, in the sense, hey, it's 2 weeks to kind of like launching this new feature. And so we're going to like fast track all the work that is needed right now for us to be able to, make this launch successful. So I would advise maybe looking at this a little differently, and that change is really throughout the life cycle of the initiative. It starts with
Mm,
identifying what is that change in the very initial stages of the project, being able to document it thoroughly and clearly with a vision and an end state of what would happen, not only from a systems and a technology standpoint, but like how would their top 10 user actions be, for instance, if they had to go along with this ride for us, with us. And so looking at change more holistically and broadly than just the last minute launch, having clear, thorough documentation on the processes and the training. And specifically, I think going back to having the advocates at every level who can champion this change, so almost like a train the trainer kind of an approach that we
yeah.
need to take, are all tactics that I think can help accelerate and really align teams on digital transformation. And I think that really gets to the heart of what it means to be about the people. Where if it's about the people,
Mm,
one, people need to know upfront. There should be no surprises. It should be clearly documented. And hey, we have to sell it to them. So, it can't just be a technology led initiative. It has to be a cross functional technology and all of the business stakeholders feeling as invested in this, because this will result in the kind of like business benefit from an automation, from an efficiency, from a growth,
mhm.
from an M&A streamlining standpoint, that all of us need to see that picture. And if not, it's hard to just push this as a one team agenda.
Of course, and that creates more long-term sustainability of the business as well.
Absolutely. And so, I think one of the goals of digital transformation is that it is scalable, right? I mean, if today we have an M&A activity of, say, three per year, then that will sustain itself, to double of that velocity. If today we have a certain way of how we're, say, shipping a certain type of product, it has to scale to multiple types of products from multiple types of locations with multiple types of like, carriers. And so I think digital transformation at the heart of it should be scalable. Although I do appreciate if teams take an MVP approach in terms of, what that minimum viable product could be. But I also noticed that, those kind of minimum viable product approaches in more business to business scenarios, the scope of this has to be at least better than what they have right now. And so I would, if there
Mm-hmm.
was an advice that I had to give out there, it would be to anybody engaged in digital transformation to truly understand the experience end to end of business users at that time, however antiquated and manual it is, and ensure that it's being benchmarked against something that is incrementally better, even in the first iteration itself. And I think that's important for
Mm,
them to feel part of that, advocacy,
yeah.
and feel part of like, the alignment as part of the goal.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned is of mapping out that end-to-end experience is so critical and so important because I think a lot of innovators are just thinking like, how do we get from point A to point B, that they forget about like the full experience of what that means for the people, for the user. Yeah. So one of the things that throughout this interview you were mentioning about M&A, and I'm curious, and let me know if this is irrelevant, but I'm wondering, as a product leader, if you are actually looking out for M&A opportunities for the company that you're with, whether that's going to help expand the product offering or the team, um, or yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, where I am right now, more of my focus is on partnerships, whether it's vendor partnerships, whether it is product partnerships from, a user acquisition or a retention standpoint, whether it's loyalty marketing partnerships for us to be able to engage our customers more over the life cycle. So where I am right now, I'm looking at more partnerships than acquisitions per se. But
Mm,
I do feel fully empowered that if there is a new business that actually comes to my attention through, many of the startup accelerators, say, that I work with, I feel empowered to make a connection with them and our corporate development team so that, they can initiate conversations and see how that performs. But on a day-to-day basis, I'm probably not involved in that much M&A activity. I'm most involved in post merger integrations. So the PMI
Mm,
aspect of things typically tends to fall on product and technology in terms of what the end state would look like and how support and maintenance would look like too. But so yeah, just to summarize, I focus more on partnerships and post merger work, but I feel fully empowered through my network if there is an opportunity that comes up to connect them to my corp dev team. Does that make sense, Jenny?
gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And what would you say is, um, I guess this kind of touches upon what we had just spoken about, but like, if a company has just gone through their own merger, or acquiring a new product, what's the one thing that they should definitely be looking out for, like to anticipate?
Um, it really depends on the size and the scale of the company. If, say, at a startup where I've been through an instance where we had to merge with actually one of our competitors, and in that
Mm,
case, the most important thing to look out for is our customer health and our customer and growth numbers, and to ensure that you know we aren't cannibalizing the growth, and we're still able to acquire customers at the rate at which we want to be, because as a startup, growth is a front and center topic, and sometimes it is
mm,
growth at all costs. So to be able to ensure that that is still maintained is actually really important. That's the external facing part. The internal part is, though, every team comes with its own different ideas, culture, values, and to ensure that we get to a place where we're able to look at our business goals, look at our customers in one single point of view, merge and blend the working cultures, get to a place where we're still able to perform very efficiently. That does take a little bit of time. I find that people maintain roadmaps differently, people prioritize differently, and so coming together on all of that, like what the vision of the customer experience should be. They have their own partnerships, and bringing all of that to the table. So I think it's important to recognize all of that. So just taking stock of all of that and ensuring that we just address them one by one, while staying
mm,
laser focused
mhm,
on what that company's combined entities business goals are. For a startup, it's always, most always, growth. Has served as well. So it's we were able to catch instances of like toxic conflict, turn that over, anticipate where different areas of toxic conflict will be, and really address those. So I think we've learned well in through that process in terms of
mm,
how to set
mhm,
this up. Now, in a much bigger company like Fanatics, usually folks like me get only roped in when the deal is potentially done, if you may. And so our work is really more on the post merger integration work, which is about then evaluating the product and the technology and the solution. And obviously, given where my passion and emphasis on kind of like ensuring that working teams are diverse and set up really well, for us to be able to integrate that is also important. It's become a little bit more challenging given everybody is in different places right now with the whole hybrid working culture. But still, I think we have enough video technologies right now for us to be able to bring teams together, which has been a godsend in a way.
yeah, yeah, that's great. And I don't know if you would be open and willing to share, like, I don't know, the tea, but I'm curious, like, what's if you had of any like funny, like toxic culture examples where it's just kind of like, I don't know, driving you crazy. I'm sure you've had some stories, and I'm curious if you're comfortable in sharing any of them.
Of course, yeah, no, that's how you learn, right? I mean, through you sometimes learn more through you know, these toxic culture examples than when everything is actually going right. I think one thing that really surprises, now it probably doesn't surprise me, but it used to really surprise and me a lot, is when teams used to make decisions for other teams. So, for instance,
Mm,
um, a product manager would say, gosh, I mean, the design of this experience should be, in a completely different direction. Or The UI should be, in a very different place. Or say a salesperson says, oh, we should use this technology stack instead of the other technology stack. And I think people mean well, but when people start sharing opinions about other people's, work and making decisions
Yeah.
about that, and if that is left unmanaged, that can become really toxic, as you can imagine. So
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
now I almost anticipate this, when I walk into a situation that somebody else is going to, define, possibly a product roadmap, a technology stack. We're probably going to have some preconceived notions on what the sales cycle should be or what the marketing strategy should be. But just knowing that up front, putting that on the table, and just making sure that we are able to drive clear roles and responsibilities and areas of accountability in terms of like who is responsible for
Hmm.
what,
Hmm. Hmm.
making sure it's a culture of like open feedback is, I think, really important. But I remember earlier on, in my much more younger and naive days, it used to annoy the heck out of me when somebody used to say, oh, but this is what should be your product roadmap, and this is how the UI should be, like, look at this site and it
Yeah.
should be like this, not like us.
Yeah.
That used to really annoy me a lot, but now I almost expect this going in, and so I just roll with
Yeah.
it.
And the big debate in Silicon Valley is like, should a company be having sales-led growth as opposed to product-led growth, right? And it's like if you're not communicating within the teams, then yeah, you're going to be polarized one way or another, as opposed to just growing together as a team.
Oh, there's no debate there. It should be product-led growth. What are you talking about today?
I'm a salesperson,
Oh my gosh.
clearly.
Okay.
I'm a UX designer turned salesperson.
And I will remain a true blood, blue product person. So, and I in fact gave a talk once on like product-led growth. But see, this is where, say there wasn't a merger between our companies, for instance, I would almost expect
Yeah.
that we will have different perspectives that we should bring to the table, and we would start immediately addressing that. But yeah, no, it's interesting to have all of these different perspectives. I think that's what helps us grow.
Yeah, definitely. And switching topics a little bit, because I want to touch upon you as an advisor and an angel investor. So you've advised and mentored numerous startup founders. Is there a particular success story or memorable experience that you can share that highlights? Um, yeah, that you can share some highlights.
Yeah, I'd love to actually. I've been very fortunate that through 500 startups and Founders Institute, I've been involved with approximately a dozen startups till now, where I've advised startup founders in various stages. I think one of the really great experiences that I had was with this company called Yoga Trail. They were, a small US based startup that was trying to bring in and create a platform for yoga teachers to be able to share content, create content. And this
Mm,
was like, 10 years ago, which, when Instagram and TikTok hadn't really taken off to the extent that, it has right now. So we needed alternate platforms in terms of like creating content. And so they were going through this really interesting milestone of how do we expand? Do we expand? Um, the founders themselves were planning to move to Thailand and were really concerned about like, is it even possible to like operate a business with US funding in Thailand?
mm,
So what I really enjoyed about that experience, and I spent about 2 years with them before we both came to the conclusion that, I think they probably need a different type of like advisor or mentor given the stage of the company that I was in. And I was struggling for time in a way to be able to help them to the extent that they want. What I really enjoyed about that experience was threefold. One was it truly played to my experience of building, online communities and marketplaces, bringing people together, scaling
mm,
globally. A lot of challenges in terms of like localization and globalization, etc., which I'd gone through many times at eBay. And and the third and most important thing probably is that I learned so much about how the US funding process works, how startup funding and fundraising actually works in the United States, in Silicon Valley, and how they perceive supposed moves to different countries either positively or negatively. And by the way, it was all positive. Everybody encouraged, the founders to move, and they ended up moving and created a successful business for the time that it existed, from, a remote island in Thailand that they actually worked in. And so I think that experience for me was really positive, because one, it played to my strengths, so it was easier for me to dig my heels in and feel like I was productive and valuable for the company. Second, we created something for a certain set of users that was groundbreaking at that time: an online community, content creation forum, the tools for them to be able to market themselves, where yoga teachers really want to be able to focus on the craft. They're really so focused on the craft. They're really
Mm.
not focused on so much about how do I market themselves, how do I put up my class
Yeah.
schedule up, and things like that. So we really made all of that so much more efficient for them. So I really felt there was a lot of value that we were driving. And third, I learned something from this process of how we moved countries, and about fundraising, and not only US but like Asian fundraising. So I think it was a great experience, and one of my personal highlights, if you may. Yeah, so that comes to mind.
Yeah. And so what happened to the team?
Um, I think they've now gone into a model where they're much more focused on tools for the yoga teachers rather than the creation of the
Mm.
content per se, which they've now just used more plugins and tools already existing that the TikToks and the Instagrams of the world offer them. So they're much more about, almost like an SMB platform for these yoga teachers that help give them the kind of tools that they need to be able to succeed. It's a challenging market. I mean, since Yoga Trail came up, there's so many SaaS SMB products that actually came up that did exactly what they did for a different business segment that could be attributable to yoga teachers and could be easily configurable and attributable if a way, but just many SaaS products like that. So I think they faced a lot of competitive headwinds, and
Mm. Mm.
I haven't kept up with them for the last at least year. So I'm inspired to, given our talk, conversation right now, to go back and connect with the founders and see and check in on how they're doing.
Yeah, I would love to hear where they're at too. Um,
Yeah.
and then what advice do you find yourself giving quite often to early stage founders?
Um, what I find myself telling most early stage founders is, just like how we probably, tell our earlier selves to, be yourself, find what yourself is, and really focus on getting something right, or like owning a space, for instance. What I
Mm.
find most founders tend to do is that great founders have great vision. They have an idea of not only how their business and company would do, but also how the industry would change and how they would impact markets and industries. Those are the great founders that I've worked with. What they struggle with is, what should I immediately focus on in the next 6 to 12 months for me to be able to be
Mm.
successful? And typically I find them focusing on way too many things, potentially conflicting
Yeah.
things that could impact how their team and budgets are actually panning out. So what I often find myself telling um, founders is, know yourself, be yourself, but your 6 to 12 month plan should be something that is a lot more focused. Don't be afraid to make the trade-offs for you to be able to be successful and show success in the short and the medium term, to for in a continuation of that journey for that vision. So that's what I find myself telling the founders more
Mm.
often. Do you
Yeah,
relate with
it's
that, Jenny? I'm curious.
do I have a what?
Do you relate to that by any chance? I'm curious, as a founder yourself and
Oh yeah.
having built a company from scratch.
Yeah, I was gonna refer the Art of War where the author says to know your enemy, you must know yourself. And I think I have such a big vision, not just for the professional work that I'm doing, but also with my personal life. And I always think of increments of 5 years, where I want to be 5 years from now, and try to like reverse engineer from that. But it's so difficult to like think about, well, what does the next 6 months have to look like?
Mm,
Because I'm always looking so far ahead that what's in the uh the near future just seems so, not chaotic, but very confusing. It's just kind of like a big blur. So I often have to like remind myself, okay, what's the process for me to get to that 5 year vision, and like really fall in love with the process to get there. Like, who do I need to be that person 5 years from now? Yeah, I
yeah,
think
no,
that's my
absolutely.
biggest challenge.
Yeah, yeah. I tell founders use the two by two rule. The two by two rule typically is I think it came out of one of the consulting companies, but it basically means what are the two things that you know you absolutely need to do immediately.
Mm,
Put that on paper, continue doing that. And what are the other two things that you want to test out and try out to get you to where you want to be from an aspirational standpoint? And by the way, you should make time for
mm,
that too in the next 6 to 12 months. So the two by two rule, typically when founders have a list of like 20 things or more
yeah.
than that, the two by two rule is typically a two short term slam dunk, absolutely things that we need to do, and two more mid to longer term things that help you achieve some of that longer term vision that you want to start tinkering with.
Mm.
When in doubt, I would say I usually tell founders use the two by two rule.
2 by 2. Okay. I like that. I use something, uh, I don't know if it's too similar, but for me, what I do, because I have hard time with consistency, because I don't know, I just have
Mm,
really bad ADHD. So every day I'm just kind of like, oh, this is catching my attention, that's catching my attention. So again, going back to the 5 year increments, I look at what are the three things that I want to accomplish in the next 5 years, and then what do I need to do today? Like, what are the big things that are going to help move the needle forward? Because I think I'm just speaking for myself. I don't know how other startup founders and visionaries are, but I get so distracted by like the long laundry list of things we have to do. And we talked about prioritization early on the interview. Like, how do you prioritize? Well, I have all those things I have to get done today, but what are the big things that I need to get done, even if that means I have to let go of the things on the list to get me closer to that 5 year vision faster? Because I could allow, and I have to be okay with letting certain things get on fire for me to really focus on that like long term vision.
yeah, you
And
bring
that to me has been the biggest growth.
you bring up a really good point. You'll also notice that, and I'll say this from experience, when you're in your 40s, you start to think not in years, but you also start to think in terms of like months and quarters, because, it's just time, and time is limited in a way. But I think you bring up a really good point, which is also the fact that um, the prioritization is important, to your point, but it's also important to kind of stick to something and actually seeing how that would actually pan out. Because I do find sometimes that startup founders have less patience to actually just seeing, how a launch would pan out end to end, seeing the impact of it, just
Mm,
giving it a little bit more time. And there is, obviously a lot of pressure, which I can empathize with, in terms of pivoting things to be able to show results more quickly. Um, m- you know, Always balancing that with just giving a moment to the things that you're doing right now to actually see and understand the full impact of it, is, I think,
yeah.
really key. And I understand it's a tough balance, when you have, significant growth milestones in front of you.
Yeah, of course. And I think, and I don't know what's the right timeline per se, but I took for startups specifically, because we're in startup world, you're always taught um, to pivot as soon as possible. If something doesn't go right, pivot, pivot, pivot.
Yeah.
But I took a course. I took a course through Tom Bilyeu, who was the founder CEO of Quest Nutrition. I think he sold that company for like $1 billion. And In his course, he says if you learn anything from this, the one key takeaway is that when you make the decision fast because you don't know what's going to be right or wrong. Just make the decision really fast. But you have to allow that decision to come into fruition for at least 6 months before you make the next decision. And I don't know how
Mm.
that applies to startups because in startups it's so fast. But at least where I'm with at Wander because we're going into year 7, that has been the case where okay, we're making a decision, we're going to make it fast, and we're going to see it through for at least 2 quarters. And I don't know, so far I think it's working.
Yeah, I think that's really great. I think that, catching a moment and just allowing that to, and actually putting a definite timeline against it, right? 2 quarters. That gives, more certainty. It gives more vision in terms of kind of like what that end state would actually look like. Is this a perpetual thing that you just need to like let be and learn? Is actually a much more scarier process than actually saying, let's just live this out for like a couple of quarters and see how it pans out. I think that's a very smart way to look at it, for sure. But it's always interesting to see how different founders balance these different things. While I also say fail fast and fail often, um, I think it's also, to your point, Ginny, to understand why things are not working, and
Hmm.
understanding the drivers behind that and staying on top of what could have happened differently or what would happen differently kind of moving forward, and having a strategy about that. So yeah, I see where you're coming from in terms of having those couple of quarters. I think that's very smart in terms of putting that time frame.
Yeah, it wasn't from me. I learned it from the course, so I can't take credit for it. um,
It's yours now to own.
it's mine now. Okay, you heard it here first. um, so just wrapping up, my last question to you is regarding what trends or what do you see? What's the vision that you see for the future? Um, and this could be just based um, on what you're seeing with the companies you're advising. I know you mentioned earlier there's a lot of AI, or within Fanatics or uh, e-commerce, whatever that is. Like, what is the vision that you see for the future?
Oh gosh, you're asking a very important question, but I have probably one non-technology answer for it and one technology answer for it. The non-technology aspect of this is that I feel like we live in a very divided world right now, and
Mm,
I don't know if I could attribute that to COVID or just different beliefs. And coming from a developing country and a country with a lot of different religions and faiths and beliefs, I think diversity is beautiful. I think diversity is and helps enrich our understanding. And however, when I read the news and it's the singular most important thing that's standing out is a lot of toxic conflict. So my vision for the world, if you may, Ginny, is for us to really truly get to a place where we can be more empathetic and understanding of one another, and believe
mm,
in the good of another. Believe that nobody comes to the table thinking I'm going to do a bad job today, or I'm going to um, uh, do something that is so destructive. There's so many factors behind actually what happens, and staying empathetic to that. My vision is, hopefully there are people, there are more bridges in this world, and are able to truly bring more people together. I think that's my vision of
mm,
what I would hope for this world to achieve. Um, on a technology level, I mean, how can you not ignore what generative AI is doing, right? And
scary.
while there's so many applications of it, I mean, like literally every other day, I'm waking up to a new use case of how generative AI is used. Um, uh, you know, Product content is written through AI, customer service operations happens through AI, product
Yeah.
design. so much of it is happening through AI, generative AI. So I mean, there's so many use cases to this, but the one use case that I think is close to my heart is, I see sometimes the world through my son, who is 9, and I see that kids at his age are curious and want to learn so much about the world and have so many questions. And I also see on the other side that teachers are strapped. I mean, my son goes to a
Mm,
private school with the best of teaching, kind of support and faculty, but still I feel that there may be things that are missing, that I think generative AI, if used in a way that can help these kids gain more knowledge of the world, expand their, and fuel their curiosity, help teachers, really
mm,
help with education, training, and support. I think that would be a pretty cool way of actually solving a real life problem that I'm probably living every day. But that also is at the heart of bringing people together. So
mm,
hopefully
yeah.
AI is able to do that too in many different ways.
I think in your vision, the two and two almost go together because in the first vision, you're wanting to see more empathy and you're wanting to see people, not converge is the wrong word, but you want to see people come together, right? And I think that starts with educating our youth, which is the technology aspect, the second part of your answer. How do you get kids to learn and be more curious, and how do you equip the teachers that are taking care of the next generation? So I think the two answers you said, they're very separate, but I actually think they can come in together. And I know you have to go, but my follow-up question to that is why not you starting something that converges both those visions? Because you have so much experience uh, through your mentorship, your advising, and through your product leadership. So why not become a founder yourself and build that vision out?
Ginny, first of all, thank you so much for connecting the dots. In a way, that's what bridging actually means, right? So, thank you for helping me see even what I said in different light. So, again, and thanks so much for that. Second, regards to being a founder, I've never really looked upon myself as a founder. I'm very entrepreneurial in the sense that I am very good with working with constraints, but I've never really looked upon this as a founder opportunity. But Ginny, maybe I should send you a message offline, and we can start something offline. If you, in both of our spare time, we can maybe
Yeah.
tinker with something and come up with something. What say?
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah. For me, my new thing now is that we set our own limits to, I think, what we can achieve. Like, if you can visualize where you want to be and how you see yourself in the future, the only thing that's stopping us from getting to that is literally ourselves, because we have all this like negative voices in our heads of like, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that, but nobody else is really telling us that. We're just telling that to ourselves. So if you can remove that negative voice in your head, you can literally accomplish whatever it is that you desire.
That's fantastic. I'm going to take this with me. I'm actually going to take a note on this and take this with me. Um, you've really given me a different perspective of seeing this. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your journey. If people want to find you and reach out to you, what is the best way that they can connect with you?
Reaching me is quite simple. It's my first name dot my last name at gmail.com. I don't drink coffee, but I'm open to any cold beverage, ice cream meetup. So, and if you are a founder or have any product ideas that you're tinkering with, I'd love to chat and catch up, because, as I said, I learned so much more, in the bargain too. So, welcome the connections.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shiva. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ginny, and so good talking to you. And congratulations on your podcast series, and wishing you all the very best, as always.
Thank you. Appreciate it.